Welcome into Vandy on SI. I'm Joey Dwyer. He's Grant Bacco. Here, a few days ahead of the MLB Draft, Vanderbilt baseball, with some real decisions this year. Maybe none of them quite as dramatic as the decision Riley Nelson had on his hands a year ago. On the site, I've got a full reflection from Riley Nelson about that decision in an exclusive interview. Go read that. But for now, we'll talk about this year a lot on the site as well about that. A Stay Go preview full of intel. We'll get into some of it here, but if you want all the intel that I've got at this point, make sure to meet us there and subscribe to this channel. We'll have a lot of football coming, a lot of basketball over the next few months as well. Graham, I've got the list kind of laid out in tiers here. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm going to do current players first. We've got more insight on them than the high school commits, but I do have some intel to share on that. I'm going to go
Yep.
first with the current players. I said very likely gone, almost no chance he returns. Braden
Yep.
Holcomb was the only player I listed in that category.
Mhm.
And then I went to likely gone, but a chance to stay. And I put Alex Kranzler in there as well as Colin Barcy. I can kind of share some follow-up thoughts on these first, but I want to, or later, but I want to introduce them to you and give you the floor. I
Mhm.
next went to Up in the Air, which I put Connor Fennell in. There's been some interesting reporting elsewhere, kind of conflicting from various outlets on what Connor Fennell's status actually is in regard to the draft. I think what one pro person told me was two pro people, one said 60% gone, one said 65% gone. I
Mhm.
think Connor Fennell's stock, though, is lower than most people would probably think in regard to the draft, and we can get into that more
Mhm.
in a minute. Miller Green, who's in the transfer portal, I've actually heard some good buzz about potentially getting taken. Obviously, left-hander, people like his size. And then I think the guys who are locks to return are relative no-brainers. Mac Whitcomb will be back, as well
Oh yeah.
as a slew of relievers. Really not a ton of draft-eligible guys that will be back necessarily, or at least are shoo-ins to be back. Graham, I'll give you the floor here. Anything you disagree with on those rankings, or anything you find particularly interesting at this stage?
No, nothing that I'd say I disagree with, honestly. I think it's pretty accurate. I think the Fennel one is the most interesting to me because obviously we all talk about his unique style in terms of how quick that he goes and how he doesn't really waste time with the pitch clock or anything like that. But at the same time, when you talk about his game, velocity wise, it's not like to me, it doesn't really seem like what you would see in the MLB. I mean, because I believe his velocity was what in the high 80s, low 90s.
Hmm.
And I mean, when you're talking MLB for your fastball, I mean, you're probably talking mid to high 90s is what you want ideally for an MLB starting pitcher. So I think Connor Fennell is very interesting to me. It's going to be also interesting to see what if he does come back or if he does go to the draft. How can he increase that velocity and how much can he increase it by over time the next few years is going to be interesting to see. To me, I think for Fennell, because of that, I think it would not surprise me at all if he returns to Vanderbilt. Honestly, I think again, like I could easily be wrong on this, but to me, I think that's maybe more of the smarter play because I think if you're Fennel and you have obviously we know what he has going with Vanderbilt, and I guess the question becomes is how confident can you be that number one, that you can get your velocity up and become having a fastball and a pitch selection that is more so at the speed of MLB pitchers that we see today, and then also I think it depends on how confident are you in your game that you can take it to the MLB in a quick amount of time or at least not spend a ton of years in the minor leagues trying to work your way up. So I think that's kind of what it depends on. So I think for me, Fennell's certainly the most interesting case. I think 60% is, I think that's interesting percent. I think for me, it's probably closer to 50-50, but
That's
hearing
what my
60%,
evaluation would be as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, I would say 50-50. This could go really either way for me. I could see it from either way. I think it would be a smart decision, in my view, if he were to stay at Vanderbilt, to get another year of experience, obviously, in the SEC and, when with Tim Corbin and all that. So, yeah, that's my thought on Fennell. I think Braden Holcomb, I'm totally with you. I'd be very surprised if he came back to Vanderbilt. I think he's gone. Obviously, we know the power he has, the hitting ability that he has. I think certainly he is going to get drafted, and I guess I would assume that he's gonna go to whatever team. It'd be stunning if he came back to me.
Yeah. The Fennel thing is interesting to me because his profile isn't going to change
Hmm.
all that much if he goes next year, and his clock will start a year later, so inherently
Yeah,
he would be
of
a
course.
little bit less valuable. But also the interesting thing is I thought he left a lot on the table this year. Like he would probably tell you this was not the year that he
Mhm.
envisioned having. I don't think he was anywhere close to what they thought he could be as the Friday night guy. And
Mhm.
that doesn't, he's not going to start throwing 95 next year every
Right.
outing. Like that's not what's going to happen. It's not like Riley Nelson's situation last year where he could just become an entirely more dynamic power hitter and maybe boost his stock. I don't know that that's in the cards for Fennel. I think another year of fully starting could be valuable, especially if he's better. Here's the thing, though, Graham. There's a world to me where he ends up as at least a Saturday starter for
Yeah.
Vanderbilt.
Oh yeah.
Vanderbilt's got two good arms, one via the portal, one via a returner, as long as Austin Nye is healthy.
Hmm.
Those guys are gonna, I think, account for at least two of the rotation spots. And then even then, you're looking at Matthew Shorey. I think is firmly in the mix to land a rotation spot next year.
Hmm.
I think Tyler Baird and Aiden Stillman have interesting leap potential heading into year two. That's not to say that Fennel's not going to beat them out. I think he's a starter if Fennel wants to be and if he comes
Hmm.
back. But I don't know that he's the Friday night guy once SEC play begins next year.
Yeah.
And I don't think his profile changes a ton. So that's the part where you're saying he should probably go.
Hmm.
But also, I think if you look at it and say he improved year over year as a consistent starter, because 2 years ago he really wasn't a consistent starter. He was out of the bullpen for
Hmm.
a lot of the year, and it was in relatively low leverage spots earlier in the year. Maybe he wasn't starting Sunday games like he eventually did. I think if he's in a high leverage weekend starting role 2 years in a row and he makes a leap, I think that changes things for him. So Fennel certainly the most interesting. To run through the others, I don't know how much we want to go into this, but I think Kranzler is probably gone.
Probably.
I've heard his under the hood stuff is really good in terms of what MLB people think. Better than the numbers would indicate. I was actually surprised at how drastic it was in terms of last year was by far his worst year statistically as a college player, but he was so much better at the end of the year, and I think he could probably ride
Mhm.
that momentum into the draft if that's what's for him. And again, to me, the reason I list him there, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him to come back because he's not going to start. And that would
Right.
be the leap that you'd be expecting from him.
Yeah.
He's going to be a bullpen guy regardless. And I don't even know if he would be their closer. So I
Yeah.
expect Kranzler to go. Barzy, I think, is a guy that scouts think they can get a lot more out of than what he's shown at this point. He did have a 917 OPS at Vandy last year. He had a fine year, all things considered, with his injury and everything. And I think they like his defensive potential as well. I don't expect him to be back, especially with the splash they made at catcher in the portal. Um, and then, am I missing anybody, Graham? I think that's everybody, right?
Yeah.
Except for Green and the obvious
Yeah.
returners.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that covered everyone.
Anybody else you or anything you have in mind with any of those guys before we get out of here? That to me, Fennel by far
Yeah.
the most interesting one, and then Kranzler I think is going to surprise people with how high he goes. Not as if he'll go in the first 5 rounds or anything, but he's going to
Hmm.
surprise people. I think Barzy might surprise people as well. Actually, interesting. One more note. I've heard not great things about Logan Johnstone's draft positioning, which is interesting. Like to me, I thought he would be a much higher pick than they're making him out to be. I think he's still going to get drafted, but I think he's going to have to scratch and claw a bit once he gets in an organization. But I actually do believe in Logan Johnstone at the next level. So
Yeah.
those are kind of the notes to leave you with in terms of the returning guys. I'll list off the high school guys at this point. I probably need to go more into it at some point, but uh, kind of the indication I've gotten is Booth, Ruiz, Wilson, those guys are gone. And then I think probably leaning gone would be Contreras, Holloway, Williams, Johnson, uh, Tronstein, Skelton, Bland, and Hurst. Maybe they get one or two of those guys through, but uh, yeah, I think their high school class is going to get decimated again. And
Yeah,
Graham, isn't it the number one class right now? And
I believe so.
I
Yes.
don't anticipate that it's going to stay that way.
No.
So could be a bleak couple days for Vanderbilt baseball, but I think the one you're really watching is Connor Fennell.
Yep. Yeah, no question. Yeah, that is the biggest question going into this draft. And if he decides to come back to Vanderbilt, then I think, Vanderbilt has a surefire starter. You would have to assume, I think. Obviously, you have the return of Austin Nye, Brenham, I believe
Yeah, from
is how you
Michigan.
pronounce. Yeah, yeah, from Michigan, right? I mean, he had a great freshman year for Michigan. He's coming in. He sounds like to me, based off his numbers and his experience that he just pitched. I mean, he sounds like a starter to me, and the numbers look like it. So I think if Fennel comes back, your rotation could very easily look like, Nye's your Friday guy, Fennel's your Saturday, and then Brenham is your Sunday type of guy. I think you
Mhm.
could easily have that rotation, and then obviously you have all those young pieces that could come out either. I mean, you mentioned Matthew Shorey. I think, obviously you got guys like Wyatt Neto and Tyler Baird that are still developing and will continue to develop that can come out, from the bullpen as well. So if you get Fennel, like, not only do you get a surefire starter, but it also helps your pitching depth as well. And a guy like a Tyler Baird, who, maybe could be that third starter if Fennel goes to the draft. If Fennel comes back, then you just push him back in your bullpen, you have a strong bullpen arm, and obviously your bullpen gets stronger with that. So yeah, I think that is certainly, a lot riding on it. There's consequences, whether Fennel stays or goes. So that is, certainly the most interesting decision of the MLB draft weekend.
For sure. Well, thank you guys for watching. We'll have a lot of football stuff the rest of the month ahead of SEC Media Days, probably some basketball stuff, a lot of exclusive interviews on the site over the next couple weeks as well. Be sure to get on the site, be sure to subscribe. But
Mhm.
for now, I'm Joey Dwyer. He's Graham Bacco, and we'll talk soon. Peace.